Right. So welcome everyone. Very happy today to be talking to my student Prerna from Bangalore, India. Welcome, Prerna.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. So we're going to be talking about Prerna's experience with Yoga Therapy International's program for trainee yoga therapists, our IAYT-accredited program, and how she has been progressing as a yoga therapist in her country of India. Before we get started, we're just going to start with Sahana Vavatu, which is a chant that we often start our teachings with in our program. So. Om Sahana Vavatu.
Om Sahana Vavatu.
Sahanau Bhunaktu.
Sahanau Bhunaktu.
Sahaviryam Karavavahai.
Sahaviryam Karavavahai.
Tejasvinavati Tamastu.
Tejasvinavadhitamastu.
Mavidvishavahai.
Mavidvishavahai.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Thank you, Prerna.
Thank you. That's beautiful.
So that chant means, may we be protected as we're together today having this conversation. May this conversation give us much joy, much energy, much light, dispelling darkness, and may there be no misunderstandings between us. May it leave us with peace in our bodies, in our speech, in our minds. So thank you for joining. And I just want to start by having you talk a little bit about your experience with the program. So when did you graduate? And maybe a highlight from your experience with the program.
So I graduated in 2019. And so this was my very first experience of yoga therapy, understanding yoga as a practice that can be therapeutic, holistic in nature, where we focus on the mind, body, the spirit. And I think the highlight of this program was just the understanding, the bridging of the Eastern philosophy and the Western medicine. I think that part of it was it gave me a very deep understanding of the subject of how yoga can be taught to people with a balance of both. So I think that was a big part of the program that I'm still, of course, learning, and I'm still understanding, processing as a teacher and applying. So it's the balance of the Eastern philosophy and the Western understanding of the body, of the human anatomy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And just I want to hear a little bit about your work in Bangalore, India. So again, Prerna was our very first student who came from India. She joined us as an international student, and she's now back home working in India, in Bangalore, which is near Chennai, not too far, where our students are actually about to go in less than a month. And I'll be seeing Prerna soon when I go to Chennai. But can you just tell us a little bit about your work?
Yeah. So I started teaching one-to-one sessions right after the program, after I graduated. And so I first began with seeing a lot of students with musculoskeletal issues. So most of them had either an injury in the knee or postural related problems, or either it would be like a lower back pain. So those were the usual conditions that I would get initially when I began teaching. But I think now over time, I seem to be focusing on a lot with anxiety relief and gut related issues. So most of my clients seem to have either anxiety caused because of maybe to do with their lifestyle or just increased stress, or post the pandemic, they just generally have been feeling a lot more anxious. And that's also been affecting their nervous system. It's also been affecting their gut in some way. Some of them end up having irritable bowel syndrome, or they just don't have a proper bowel movement in the morning. So I think over the past 2 or 3 years, post the pandemic, during the pandemic and post the pandemic, I seem to be focusing on a lot of therapy practice for just nervous system regulation, gut health, which is also very closely connected with regulating your nervous system, and a lot of practices that really need to focus on their breath, on channeling their breath in the right way, breathing effectively, and just letting themselves relax and ease in their bodies. So it's sort of shifted from musculoskeletal conditions primarily to the focus on mind and breath. So that's where I seem to be now focusing a lot of my attention towards. So even the reading that I do with respect to some of the conditions that my clients are facing have a lot to do with just nervous system regulation through breath, through meditation, simple meditation practices, very gentle chants that can help them just ground themselves and relax. So I think that's where my practice is now. I seem to be seeing a lot more clients with these conditions. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, you graduated almost 5 years ago. I mean, you're moving into your 5th year, and I think that's a normal evolution for a yoga therapist, is to start with the Annamaya, and of course, Pranamaya, we're always working with, the physical and pranic layers. But as you evolve, as a therapist, I think it's really common to start with the musculoskeletal and then start moving to more pranic and then Mano and Vijnana.
Maya and Vijnana Maya. That's right. Yeah.
Try to bring them towards Ananda Maya, that joy, that endless joy that we've talked about. So yeah, that it sounds like you're right on track from what I've seen and my own experience too, right? And you're even moving into, some conditions now of the physiological or systemic kind, right?
Right.
IBS and IBD and those kinds of things, and that gets more complicated. So again, you're moving into the more subtle aspects of what you learned during the program as well.
Yeah, that's true. I think the program taught me a lot of the basics, and that gave me a strong foundation to understand a person's body. But over time, since I've been meeting a lot of people with systemic conditions, I think I'm now starting to learn a little bit more about specific conditions. Of course, I still don't see clients with terminal illnesses or any major mental health issues. We covered a lot of that in our program as well, especially yoga for cancer patients and for Alzheimer's. But I don't get a lot of clients with these conditions. I feel like most of them, especially the ones who are, working, the ones in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, They primarily have a lot of conditions that seem to be stemming from general anxiety. And I think the pandemic has probably just made it a lot worse. So people are feeling a general sense of anxiety all the time in their bodies. And I think that's causing a lot other problems in their gut and with their breathing and with the way they're just functioning in their day-to-day lives. So I started seeing a lot of clients develop issues that are basically stemming from unregulated anxiety. So now I've focused a lot of my attention towards that, and I'm reading up a lot on conditions that can result from extreme anxiety. And yeah, I seem to be working with a lot of patients with these conditions now. Yeah.
It's great. Yeah. During, post pandemic and during the pandemic, we've seen internationally a rise in mental health issues, right?
Absolutely.
So it's a big area for us to cover as yoga therapists.
Yeah.
In terms of the program, we had quite a big section on mental health, 60 hours of the program. And then we have additional, another it's now 12 hours with Nicole Marcia in trauma-informed practices. And Nicole is actually going to be teaching the whole mental health section this summer for my current group. So she's getting even more involved in the program. Can you just talk about maybe how some of that work you did on developing therapeutic helping skills, as we call it? We're not calling it counseling skills, but therapeutic helping skills, and also, presentation on just what's considered abnormal health from or abnormal mental health from the DSM, the Diagnostic Manual of Abnormal Conditions, Mental Health Conditions. Can you talk about a little bit how maybe the program prepared you for the work you're moving into right now?
Yeah, I think at the program, we probably covered a lot more in detail. So like I said, I've still not had the opportunity to meet clients with serious mental health issues. But I think especially when the portion where we covered about trauma, and I think just understanding the way as a therapist, as a teacher, we can hold space for somebody who's been in a traumatic situation in life. It could be, a physical trauma, or it could be a mental, emotional trauma. So I think that gave me a lot more sensitivity, and also just as a teacher, the way I could approach my sessions in a more like just taking all of this into consideration, where I'm not, like I can design my classes in a way that I'm trauma informed as a teacher. So that bit was it's difficult in India, because I think culturally we come from a country where I wouldn't say we're not trauma informed, but I think we're a little more rigid in the way we teach, in our teaching style. So the teachers in India, especially the yoga teachers, the traditional yoga teachers, tend to be a little more, I think their way to discipline you is to just try to push you into doing something. But of course it works in our culture and so in a certain way. But I think the program, what we covered about holding space for people who have had trauma in their lives, that was a really huge learning for me, because now when I meet people who have had trauma in their bodies and in their lives, I'm able to, as a teacher, be a lot more sensitive and create an atmosphere of more comfort there, and they can trust me. And I've actually had clients say that to me just from reading my intake form questions, which is like the very basic, I mean, most of those questions were also what we covered in our program, suitable questions in your intake that can give you a fair idea of the person's background. I had a few clients tell me that they feel very safe and comfortable from just the questions that I've asked them. They feel safe and comfortable enough to present themselves and be vulnerable to, just to be a part of my sessions and to learn from me or to heal from my practices. So I think I think that bit of the program really gave me a lot more understanding of how to approach somebody who's had trauma in their lives, and how do I sort of present my practices in a safe way and a more informed manner. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great to hear, because that's a very important aspect of the program, is the trauma-informed piece, as it applies to mental health and physical well-being as well. You mentioned before, when we talked via your written interview, that certain aspects of yoga therapy were more important to you. You mentioned the panchamayas, the layers of existence we've talked about, as well as the 3 doshas. And as you know, the Ayurveda is also another really big piece in the program. It's 60 hours of Ayurveda as applied to yoga therapy. So I teach that part, and it's, very applied. Could you talk about how you weave in your knowledge of Ayurveda into what you do with your clients?
Yeah, so this is still a learning in progress, but I think I learned so much from, so with the portion that was covered in the program about the 3 doshas, I think that gave me a very clear understanding about people's body types and their mental constitution. And I think that helps as a teacher to have a basic background of someone's personality before we bring in practices. So it's still something that you learn, with more interaction with your clients. But I think since I have a bit of understanding of the 3 doshas and the way that keeps changing, and also from the way the person speaks to you or the way they approach their practice, you sort of get an understanding of their constitution, their predominant constitution. And so you can bring in, as a teacher, you can bring in practices that can focus on balancing their, a constitution that has been a little off balance. You can kind of bring it back into balance. You can offer them the right practices that can focus on that. So I think learning about the 3 doshas in Ayurveda, also the diet that can play a huge role in a person's healing, that part of it was really helpful with understanding a client and being able to at least start them off on a few practices that can bring in a balance, and then watching them, evolve or change, or just observing the changes in the doshas through their practice and see if I can keep improvising on those practices as well. So that information becomes helpful. It's, of course, like I said, it's like as you keep observing your client, you start noticing different behaviors, and you start noticing how the person's doshas also keep changing. So sometimes they walk into a session with a lot more vata in their bodies because they're restless about something, or they're just generally probably from the food that they've eaten the previous day. And there are some days where they enter the class with this lethargic, heavy energy, and I know that they need to just bring in some, you need to get in some pitta into their bodies to get them going and to get them active for the rest of the day. So the information that I learned about all of this in the program, I think it helps me with just getting a basic understanding of somebody when they walk into my space, and be able to plan a session according to what they need for that time, or what they need for the day, or
Great, thank you. So just to close, is there anything else you would like to share about your experience in the program, and about what's important to you in yoga therapy today?
Yeah, so about the program, I think what I really liked about the structure of the program is we had this community that's constantly supporting your learning forward. So even once I was done with the program, I still had a lot of conversation with you. If I had a client who, I need a little bit more support and guidance with understanding my practices or getting it verified, I knew I could always reach out to the mentors and I could reach out to you for that support. And I still continue to have that. And I think for me, that's a very important part of being a yoga therapist, is to have that community of support and to have an opportunity to learn from each other as we grow forward as teachers. So I do know a lot of my cohort fellow women are doing a lot of different practices. They're focusing on yoga therapy for migraines, and they're focusing on so many different things. And I think there's a lot of learning happening there. Since we're all part of this community, I think that's a really, it's been the best part of this program, to have that community and to keep learning from each other. And apart from that, I think I think just getting my basics of the basic understanding of yoga therapy, and particularly what IAYT stands for, the focus on inclusion and diversity. I think all of that was a really important part of my training, understanding IAYT as a community and the way they, like, what they stand for, and how does that also affect you, in your teaching, the way you can apply it to your own teaching, and the way you can grow as a therapist by also sort of following these principles of being inclusive and being diverse, open to learning from different people. So I think that part of it was also it was a good, I'm happy to be a part of this community, and I'm happy to have been introduced to it. And it's like I have my cohort and my team as a support, and I also have IAYT as a larger board, through which I get to learn a lot. So I recently enrolled at the symposium in the year 2022. Unfortunately, I could not be a part of it physically because I live too far away, and there's way too many restrictions and rules with traveling now. But I'm so glad they opened it up to a virtual platform as well. So I've had access to a lot of videos, and I've been learning a lot from those videos, from the symposium, from the speeches by different other teachers and trainers who are doing work with therapy. I think getting an opportunity to be a part of IAYT has also come through your program, which is something I'm really grateful for as a teacher.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Prerna, for your
thank you so much for having me.
And I know it's getting late for you, and travels ahead. Shall we end with Satoma Satgamaya?
Yes, please. Yeah.
So we'll just do call response. Asatoma Satgamaya.
Om Asatoma Sadgamaya.
Om Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya.
Om Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya.
Om Mrityormamritangamaya.
Om Mrityormamritangamaya.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Harihi Om.
Harihi Om.
Thank you very much, Prerna. Have a wonderful sleep and holiday ahead.
Thank you. Wish you the same.
All right. We'll talk soon.
Yes.